Homemade cookies are probably my most favorite thing to eat. I'm like your red-haired cookie monster. I love cookies. Every night before I go to bed, I have 2 cookies as part of my nighttime routine. I've done this for years. Love my cookies, can't sleep without my cookies. And today's recipe, we're going to learn how to make chocolate chip cookies that are low carb, sugar-free, keto-friendly, gluten-free, and diabetic-friendly, and they're made with something that I like to call miracle cookie dough. And the reason why I call it miracle cookie dough is once you learn how to make the base of this cookie dough, you can add just about anything to it and make just about any type of cookie that you can think of. You can add cocoa to it and make chocolate cookies. You can add candy to it and make M&M cookies if you can find sugar-free ones. And you can just put anything you want in there and make it any type of creative cookie you want. It's just an awesome, awesome base once you learn how to make the base of this dough. So if you want a printable version of this, then check out my website at janetsdeliciouslowcarbkitchen.com. You can find a printable version of this and other goodies there for you. Also, if you're new to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button and hit the little notification bell. That way you can be notified every time I put out a new video. And also, don't forget to stick around to the end of the video because I'm going to teach you how to make some keto-friendly chocolate that you can actually add to this miracle cookie dough and have 100% completely keto-friendly chocolate chip or chocolate chunk cookies. So while you do that, let's get cooking. Preheat your oven to 375 degrees. Line 2 large baking sheets with parchment paper. In a medium mixing bowl, whisk together 1 cup plus 1 tablespoon of almond flour. I know this sounds like a weird amount, but trust me, it's what works. 1/4 teaspoon of salt. 1/2 teaspoon of baking powder, and 1 teaspoon of xanthan gum. Don't skip on this. This is your binding agent. Without it, your cookies will crumble. Whisk these all together until they're fully combined and there are no lumps in the almond flour. Set that bowl aside, and in a large mixer bowl, add 1/2 cup of brown swerve or brown sugar sweetener of your choice, 1/4 cup of monk fruit sweetener or sweetener of your choice, and 6 tablespoons of butter that have been melted and cooled. Beat these together on low for about 30 seconds or until they're fully combined. Add 1 large room temperature egg and 1 large room temperature egg yolk. Do not put 2 whole eggs in there because your batter will be too wet if you do that. So 1 whole egg plus 1 egg yolk. That makes the texture perfect. And again, as I always tell you guys, anybody who's been listening to this channel, room temperature eggs, they make your batter much more smooth. And 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract. Beat these on low 15 to 20 seconds or until they're fully combined and the egg yolk is blended completely. Carefully add the flour mixture to the wet ingredients and beat on low for about 20 to 30 seconds or until everything is fully combined and there's no dry ingredients left in the bowl. Once it's been beaten together, scrape down the sides and let the dough rest for about 3 minutes. This just helps the xanthan gum to start really binding those ingredients together. Letting low-carb batters and doughs set for a few minutes is always best because you really got to let that binding agent get active in your doughs and batters. So you don't want to skip that part of letting the dough set for a few minutes. Once it's done sitting for a little bit, use your wooden spoon and give it a gentle stir to make sure that the binding agent is working. So your batter should be a little sticky. That's just a sign that the xanthan gum is working and starting to bind all your ingredients together. Use a wooden spoon and gently fold in your chocolate chips or chocolate chunks or whatever add-ins of your choice are. Remember, this is miracle cookie dough, so you can put any add-in you want right now. If you want the chocolate chips or chocolate chunks, you add those in. If you want another type of add-in instead of the chocolate chips or chocolate chunks, like maybe you want nuts or white chocolate chips or M&Ms or some other type of sugar-free candy, whatever you want, this is your time to add it in. And just for future information, if you're wanting these to be chocolate cookies, then you can add 2 tablespoons of cocoa into your dry ingredients before you add your dry ingredients into the wet ingredients. That's just if you want your cookies to be chocolate flavored. So once you've folded in whatever add-ins you're choosing to use, then scoop the dough 1 to 1.5 tablespoons at a time onto your prepared baking sheet. I use a cookie scoop, and it's about 1 tablespoon in size, maybe a little tiny bit more, but roughly my cookie scoop is about 1 tablespoon. But if you're wanting your cookies to be a little bit bigger, you can do 1.5 tablespoons instead. Once you've scooped your dough all out, then shape each dough scoop into a tight ball and use your hand and slightly flatten the tops of the cookies. You don't want to smash them down. Remember, this dough does not contain gluten, so it's not going to rise the same way. It's not going to fluff out the same way as a traditional cookie would. So basically, whatever shape you shape these dough balls into, that's pretty much what your cookie is going to look like. They do puff up a little bit and they do spread just a tiny bit, but not much at all. So basically, whatever shape you're putting that in, that's what it's going to be when you take it out of the oven. So you do want to flatten the tops just a little bit so they actually look like a cookie and not a ball when they're done baking. So flatten the tops just a hint. Then put them in the oven and bake them for 10 to 12 minutes or until they're just lightly golden around the edges. Once they're done baking, let them cool on the baking sheet for about 5 minutes or until they firmed up and they're cool enough to touch. Now when you first take these out, they're going to seem a little bit soft, but they will firm up as they cool on the baking sheet for those 5 minutes. So that's why it's important that you do let it sit on the baking sheet for 5 minutes. It needs to firm up a little bit. You don't want to overcook your cookies. You might take them out and you might say, oh, these are soft, they need to go in more. No, they don't. 10 to 12 minutes is perfect. You do not want to go over that 12-minute mark. I've done that before and have overcooked my cookies. And so make sure you don't go over that 12-minute mark. Just when you take them out, make sure they sit for that 5 minutes. Once they're cool enough to handle, transfer them to a wire rack and let them cool completely. This recipe makes about 2 dozen cookies if you're scooping them out 1 tablespoon at a time. If you're wanting more, you can always double this recipe. If you're wanting less, you can always do the recipe in half. Once they've cooled completely, you can eat them or store any leftovers in an airtight container. At room temperature, they'll usually keep and still be fresh for probably 3 to 4 days. If you don't think you're going to eat them right away, you can freeze them and pop them out, let them thaw out when you're ready to use them. Otherwise, there you have it. Quick and easy keto chocolate chip cookies made with miracle cookie dough. Eat and enjoy. If you're wanting to make your own keto chocolate chips for this recipe, or if you're just wanting to make a good keto chocolate bar just to munch on for something sweet, this recipe for keto chocolate is very quick and very easy. In a medium saucepan or the bottom pan of a double boiler, bring about 1 cup of water to a low boil over medium-low heat. It doesn't have to be a rapid boil, it just needs to be enough to be able to create steam, because this is what's going to help cook your chocolate. Once it's come to a low boil and starting to create steam, place the top pan of the double boiler on top of the bottom pan, or if you don't have a double boiler and you're using a saucepan, place a heat-proof safe bowl securely over the top of the pan with the water in it. Make sure if you are using a bowl that it is heat safe and that it securely fits over the top without teetering or wobbling. And also make sure that the bottom of the bowl is not touching the water at all. That'll make the bowl too hot and then you'll scorch your chocolate. So make sure that it's just hovering over the water just enough for the steam to be able to heat the bottom of the bowl gently. Also, make sure your heat stays at a medium-low to low temperature. If you make the heat too hot, it'll cook the chocolate too fast and you'll either end up with a burnt taste in your chocolate or your chocolate can seize up on you and you'll have chunky chocolate. And nobody wants that. So once you've got your double boiler in place or your heat-safe bowl in place, add 1/4 cup of butter and stir it with a heat-safe spatula until the butter has completely melted. Make sure it is melted fully and completely. I usually like to cut my butter into cubes so that it melts quicker and more evenly over the heat. Once the butter has melted, add 2 tablespoons of powdered swerve or powdered sweetener of your choice. Make sure it is powdered or confectioner's sweetener. The granulated sweetener tends to seize up and you can't get it as smooth as the powdered sweeteners. So powdered swerve is what I use. It works the best. Stir it in continually until it fully dissolves. This can take 1 or 2 minutes maybe. You just want to make sure that every single part of the sugar is fully and completely dissolved. You don't want to have grainy chocolate. Once the swerve is dissolved, add 2 tablespoons of cocoa powder and 1/4 teaspoon of vanilla extract. Stir it with your spatula until the cocoa has fully dissolved. Make sure the chocolate mixture is completely smooth. Once it's completely smooth and there's no grains in your chocolate, pour the chocolate into a heat-safe measuring cup that has a spout so it's easier to pour into your molds. Pour the chocolate into the molds of your choice. If you're wanting to make chocolate chips, then put it into the chocolate chip molds. If you're just wanting chocolate bars or chocolate candy, you can put them into chocolate candy molds. If you don't have molds of any kind, you can pour them into ice cube trays and just fill the ice cube cups about maybe a 1/4 way up. You don't want a thick, huge hunk of chocolate, especially if you're going to use it in cookies. If you're just wanting it as a chocolate candy, I guess, if you don't mind a huge hunk of chocolate, you can fill it all the way up. But if you're wanting to use it for cookies or just as a little snack, just fill the ice cube tray cup about a 1/4 way full if you don't have molds. Once they're in the molds of your choice, then place them in the refrigerator for at least 2 hours or until they're completely firm. I like to do mine overnight. Really works the best because you really want to make sure that chocolate is firm before you eat it. Otherwise, it'll melt in your hand as soon as you get it. So 2 hours works if you're really in a hurry to get that chocolate, but to really get the full effect of it, you really need to refrigerate it overnight. Now this recipe makes dark chocolate, so if you're wanting a milk chocolate, then after the cocoa has dissolved, stir in 1 tablespoon of powdered milk or powdered coconut milk if you're going strict keto, and keep stirring it until it fully dissolves into the chocolate mixture before you pour it into the molds. Once the milk and everything's fully combined and everything's fully smooth, just pour it into the molds just like you would with the dark chocolate. Now, if you are wanting this chocolate to use as chocolate chips or chocolate chunks, then you'll need to place the chocolate chips or the chocolate chunks in the freezer overnight. Once they've firmed up in the molds, then place them on a baking sheet in a single layer and freeze them overnight. That way they're nice and firm when you put them in your cookies. Also, you might want to use just a little less than the recipe calls for if you're using this recipe for the chocolate chips. Homemade chocolate doesn't have all the preservatives and whatnot that store-bought chocolate has, so it melts quickly and can get runny really fast. So by freezing it, that helps it to melt a little slower when it's cooking in the oven in your cookies. It helps it melt a little slower. That way it doesn't get as runny as it would if you were to just make it firm in the refrigerator and then put it in your cookies. You can do it that way, but you run the risk of it becoming pretty runny. For example, here I've got cookies on this side that I made with my chocolate with this recipe using chocolate chunks. I put the chocolate into chocolate bar molds and then I just cut them into really small pieces and used them for chocolate chunks in this cookie. Well, I didn't put them in the freezer and I used them in the cookies and they melted a little too quick, and as you can see it gushed out the side a little bit. Still tastes good and it's still edible, whatnot, but you got that chocolate goo around the outside of it. So freezing it will help it not to melt so fast. So you can see it in comparison to the ones that I used with the store-bought chocolate chips. You know, they're all nice and intact and no gooeys over the side. But these ones that I did not freeze, that were homemade chocolates and didn't freeze them, they kind of oozed out the side a little bit. Which, like I said, isn't necessarily a bad thing. It doesn't completely ruin your cookie, but it doesn't look as pretty either. So you definitely want to freeze the chocolate if you're going to use it in your cookies. And there you have it. Keto-friendly chocolate that you can use in gluten-free, keto-friendly chocolate chip cookies. Eat and enjoy. And that's our recipe of the day. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, hit the like and the subscribe button. Leave me a comment if you want to. Let me know if there's any recipes that you'd like to learn how to make, and I'll do what I can to get those out there for you. And as always, keep cooking.